Okay, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the council meeting for Wednesday, November the 13th. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and we start with our land acknowledgement. We are gathering on lands that have been home to First Nations people from time immemorial. We acknowledge that what we now call Richmond Hill is on the treaty lands and territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and the Mississauga and Chippewa nations of the Williams Treaty. We also recognize that we are on part of the traditional territories of the Haudenosaunee and the Huron-Wendat. We would also like to acknowledge all First Nation, Inuit, and Métis people from across North America, also known as Turtle Island, who now reside in the city of Richmond Hill. We are committed to building constructive and cooperative relationships. So with that, I would ask if you're able, please stand for our national anthem. Okay, thank you so much. And the next item is public forum, which I don't believe we have anybody signed up for. And then the following item is council announcements. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you very much. Through you, the chair, I'd like to talk a little bit about an event that you and I were able to attend in Ward 2 at the National Training Rinks on Saturday. And this was brought to us by the Ismali Community Alum Arts and Sports Festival called the Alum Winter Classic, where, as you can see, with the sweaters that we're wearing, and we were lucky enough to get to the highlight game, which was actually the women's game. And quite frankly, anybody who thinks that women can't play hockey, they should have been out to see this game because you'd be quite surprised. So it was very nice that they invited us. That was over the weekend. They played a 2-game tournament on Friday and Saturday. And, you know, if you missed it, make sure you don't miss it next year because it was quite the event. So thank you. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much. And I have to say, I feel particularly happy to be wearing this hockey jersey. I wasn't a very good hockey player when I was a kid, and it just makes me feel better to wear a hockey jersey periodically. So thank you also for that. Okay, next is Councillor Tree.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair, Ms. Mayor as well. So last weekend, there was an event for the United Way CN Tower climbing. So I went to there with my 2 kids. So we climbed up to 145 floors. This is my first time reaching to CN Tower, but we made it. Okay, thank you so much.
We will definitely be delegating all athletic duties to you on behalf of this council. Thank you very much for doing that. Councillor Silibets.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and welcome everybody in chambers and online to today's council meeting. I just wanted to mention that today, November the 13th, is World Kindness Day. And World Kindness Day is celebrated around the world on this particular date. First introduced in 1998 by the World Kindness Movement, World Kindness Day offers an opportunity to highlight good deeds in the community and the common thread of kindness. The day also encourages people to move away from self-centeredness and focus on collective well-being, proving that compassion and kindness are universal languages understood by all. And I think most of us would agree that there is nothing we would like more to embrace than World Kindness Day at this moment in time. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor. Anybody else for announcements? Councillor DePaulo?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to extend congratulations to our local Legion for a very successful, once again, Remembrance Day ceremony on Sunday, and at the Region, a memorial service that was really good on Remembrance Day itself on Monday. And then yesterday, all of council knows, all 9 of us were there, but it needs to be said, it was a very exciting day. The official opening of Amazon operation in Richmond Hill. It's 4 years in the making. It was in 2020 they came in, and what I want to point out, Mr. Mayor, and just highlight is that the people from Amazon acknowledged our city staff here as being extremely cooperative, and with 19 of these massive distribution centers in Ontario and over 30 in Canada, they said that Richmond Hill was the best city to work with as they went through the building process for this building. So I just wanted to acknowledge that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much. That's well said. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none, just a couple things. I also would like to reiterate that as an occasion, the opening of Amazon, and really was interesting that all of us had an opportunity to tour that facility and learn a little bit more about what they will be bringing to our community, jobs, but also the amount of spin-off benefit with all of the different independent contractors that they use to do a lot of their delivery is really quite remarkable. So I'm really pleased that they're there. I agree with you. I really am pleased to hear that they were so thankful for staff for being so great and cooperative in making sure that became a reality. I also would say that it was really incredible to me to be walking into their cafeteria area, and they've got this big giant mural that that visualizes all kinds of different aspects of Richmond Hill, including the Dunlop Observatory, even down to monarch butterflies, with the fact that we're a Mayor's Monarch Pledge signatory, and all kinds of landmarks and aspects of the community, including the Jefferson Salamander, which was there as part of the mural as well. So they've really done their homework on Richmond Hill, and I thought that was very gratifying. I would also like to just put out a shout out to the Royal Canadian Legion Branch 375 and our staff who helped to organize that event, the Remembrance Day event, both on Sunday and on Monday. And they do a great job and have been doing a great job for many, many years to make sure that, we have as a community a place to come and memorialize and celebrate the veterans that have done all the things that they've done to give us the country that we have today. And without their leadership in this, I'm not sure we would be able to put on as fulsome and as meaningful a ceremony that we are able to enjoy every single year. And I will say there were lots and lots of people out on Sunday, including a lot of really young kids that were there, and it was really gratifying to see. So thank you to the Royal Canadian Legion and to our staff for the work that we are all collectively doing to make sure that we're marking Remembrance Day in a very proper and dignified way. So with that being said, I will be looking for introduction of emergency or time-sensitive matters. Seeing none, I need a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Silovitz, Councillor Tree, all those in favor? Okay, that carries unanimously. Disclosures of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof. Seeing none, Okay, adoption of previous council minutes, council meeting held October 22nd and the council meeting held October 23rd. Sorry, council public meeting, October 22nd and the 23rd was a council meeting. 2-for-1 special, Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo, Councillor Davidson, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Thank you very much. Okay, so number 10, identification of items requiring separate discussion. We have, actually, everything could be passed on consent today if that is the will of council. Councillor Tree?
Mayor West, I just want to have a comment. Last week, we discussed about the storm warning charges. I think we require for a flat rating charge. I'm looking for the 15.2 pounds, 15.2 pounds 3. I did not see that attachment here.
You can pull that if you want.
Yeah, I want.
Okay, fine. Okay, so we've got that pulled. Anything else? Anybody else want to discuss anything, any of the other items? Okay, seeing none. So that means we can pass on consent 15.1 and 2 and the subsections there in there, and then 15.2.4 all the way down to 15.3. The additions, the memorandum 15.4 and the correspondence from the resident 15.5, and we'll hold the bylaws, Mr. Clerk. Okay, then let's do the bylaws at the same time. Let's live dangerously. 18.1 to 18.10 for the bylaws. Okay, so Regional Local Councillor DiPaolo, you'll move that. Councillor Silovitz, all those in favor? Opposed, that carries. Thank you. Okay, so next item is public hearing. We have none. We do have a presentation today by Jeremy Watts, Acting Chief of the York Region Paramedic Services, regarding updates on dispatch modernization and the master plan for 2021 and to 2031. I'm really pleased Mr. Watts is here today. We in Regional Council get presentations from the paramedics on a regular basis, but there's some exciting stuff and important things happening with paramedic services in all of the region of York. And I really am pleased to invite Mr. Watts here to explain that all to all of us. So thank you very much, Mr. Watts. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good morning, Mayor West and members of council. So as the mayor said, my name is Jeremy Watts, and I have the very much the privilege of being currently the acting chief of our York Region Paramedic Service. And thank you for the opportunity to be able to present an update on the rollout of the new medical priority dispatch system known as MPDS. I'll be providing an overview of the expected changes and the impacts on your residents as requested by Mayor West today. So today's presentation, I also hope to cover an overview of York Region Paramedic Services, including response time information, very much around Richmond Hill, the need for dispatch modernization and why the current 911 ambulance dispatch system requires these updates. Progress on the implementation of MPDS at the Georgian Central Ambulance Communication Center, or CAC. And spoiler alert, we actually go live today. So we're really excited. We're really excited for that. It's been a long time coming. I also hope to cover what MPDS means for our services and potential future benefits of the provincial government initiated dispatch modernization project. And MPDS is one of the final components of this modernization effort and is crucial for future planning of paramedic services across the province. We look forward to discussing how these advancements will enhance our emergency response capabilities and improve service delivery within our community. First, I wanted to provide an overview of our service. So York Region Paramedic Services proudly provides round-the-clock emergency and non-emergency medical response across all municipalities within York Region. In 2023, our paramedics responded to approximately 93,000 incidents. Beyond the emergency response capacity, we also support our community through innovative community paramedicine programs and new models of care, providing continuous care for those most in need. Our strength lies within our people. With over 600 plus full-time staff, including 530 frontline paramedics, we're always ready to respond. York Region is rapidly growing and diversifying. We anticipate a 6.8% annual increase in call demand through 2031, driven by urban expansion in areas like Richmond Hill, Markham, and Vaughan, and also significant growth seen in more rural areas currently in East Gwillimbury. Our aging population presents unique challenges. By 2051, seniors will make up 62% of our population, which will be up significantly from the 42% that it represented in 2021. Seniors over 75 are twice as likely to require hospitalization or engage paramedic services compared to those aged 55 to 74. In 2023, 58% of our 911 calls came from seniors aged 65 and older, highlighting the critical role that paramedics play in their journey of care. So before I take you through some of the 911 system changes, I want to provide an overview of the current paramedic response landscape within Richmond Hill. So Richmond Hill currently has 3 existing stations that are directly supporting it, with 4 surrounding stations providing additional response capacity. As part of our master plan, 2 new stations are proposed in the surrounding vicinity to enhance the overall coverage within the area. Yearly 911 call volume saw a slight increase over previous years, and for the year of 2023, we responded to 14,132 calls just within Richmond Hill alone. And I wanted to highlight sudden cardiac arrest response time metrics, which is a key response time target that is set by the province. These are categorized as our most urgent response, and the province sets a target of arriving within 6 minutes, at least 60% of the time. In Richmond Hill's response time for sudden cardiac arrest was met 75% of the time and 68% of the time in 2022 and 2023. As well, I just wanted to highlight Richmond Hill is more urban than some of the surrounding areas. So response times are generally better compared to more rural areas, but can be significantly impacted by factors such as traffic congestion, as well as vertical response, which for us means when we respond to higher levels of buildings, it takes a longer time to connect with those folks that are calling. We have an excellent partnership with Mackenzie Health Richmond Hill, who's one of the better performing hospitals in terms of ambulance offload delay, not only within the region, but to be honest, within the province. This supports our paramedics returning to the community faster as they're able to transfer care of their previous patient and return to the community, which increases our response capacity, which is definitely most areas of the province would love to see the targets that Mackenzie Health Richmond Hill is able to maintain. Just jumping back to I wanted to provide an overview of sort of how the current 911 system works in the call taking workflow. So 911 calls in York Region are initially answered by York Regional Police through what is known as the Public Safety Answering Point, which is also known as a PSAP. York Regional Police transfers these calls to secondary PSAPs, which include Richmond Hill Fire and Emergency Services and the Georgian Central Ambulance Communication Center, or the CAC. Of note, YRP's PSAP is transitioning to the next generation 911 network, which will allow the system to better triangulate a person's location, which will improve the accuracy of identifying the call location. YRP then, once it transfers the 911 call to the Georgian CAC, the ambulance dispatcher prioritizes the call, which is currently based on a 2-priority response system. Once prioritized, the closest available ambulance is notified, and then paramedics respond to the emergency. The response time clock starts once the paramedic receives notification, and once paramedics arrive at the scene, they assess and either transport the patient to hospital, or they may treat and refer or release to scene, reducing the need for transport to the hospital. Now I'd like to play a short video that demonstrates the call process under the new MPDS system and has been integrated within our public engagement.
York Region paramedic services are there when our community needs them the most. We provide emergency and non-emergency medical response 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Our skilled, smart, and strong team includes frontline paramedics, specialty teams, and support staff, all dedicated to delivering the highest quality of care. In November of 2024, the Medical Priority Dispatch System, or MPDS, will be implemented as part of the Ontario government's Your Health Plan, introduced by the Ministry of Health. This evidence-based technology, used globally, will transform how 911 calls are prioritized in York Region. MPDS ensures that emergency calls are prioritized based on urgency. This means patients will receive care when they need it most. Life-threatening cases are given top priority, ensuring the most timely and appropriate level of out-of-hospital care is available for all in our community. When anyone calls 911, communications officers will ask detailed questions to gather specific information about the patient's condition.
Ambulance, what is the address of your emergency?
What's the phone number, including area code that you're calling from?
Are you with the patient now?
Okay, tell me exactly what happened.
Is there any serious bleeding?
Has he ever had a heart attack or angina?
This allows for quick and effective incident prioritization, sending paramedics to the most urgent cases first, but ensuring all of our community has access to care through the 911 system. Lights and sirens are used to respond to and transport patients with the most urgent needs, such as a heart attack, stroke, or a serious traumatic injury, ensuring prompt transfer to the hospital under our paramedics' highly skilled care when necessary. For non-life-threatening conditions, such as sprains or broken bones, there may be a longer wait time. Communications officers will continue to monitor the patient's status with follow-up calls.
Hi there, this is the ambulance service calling back. We have been delayed. Has there been any change to the patient's condition or circumstance?
If their conditions worsen, the call will be reprioritized and help will be sent without delay. It's important to remember that a longer wait time doesn't mean your call is not important. We understand how stressful it can be. Rest assured, York Region paramedics are committed to helping you as quickly as possible. The health and well-being of our residents is our top priority. Our paramedics are dedicated to delivering care and saving lives. For more information on the Medical Priority Dispatch System, visit york.ca/paramedic services.
Thank you. As you saw in the video, MPDS replaces the old system, expanding emergency response levels from 2 to 5. This allows for more accurate prioritization and resource allocation. I want to highlight what this may mean for you in your role as elected officials within our community. You may receive calls from constituents if there are delays in ambulance response times for less urgent calls. This is a common experience in other regions that have transitioned already to this MPDS system. There are key messages we want you and the public to know and be aware of to best support this change. Callers can expect more detailed questions from dispatchers to help them gather specific information about a patient's condition to make quick and effective decisions. 911 callers may receive more detailed instructions to assist them prior to paramedic arrival. While longer wait times may occur for non-urgent calls, these incidents will be dispatched as soon as an appropriate ambulance is available and will receive follow-up callbacks to check on the patient's status. Patients will be directed to call 911 back if their condition changes. The overall goal of MPDS is to improve the prioritization of 911 calls to the most critical incidents so that the most critical incidents receive the most rapid response from our system. Most importantly, we want to assure all York Region residents that they will receive a clinically safe medical response, whether for the most urgent or for low acuity conditions. Based on the experiences of other services that have already implemented MPDS, York Region can expect some key positive outcomes. While the system does not address all call demand, it will ensure the most critical patients get help first through better call prioritization that best reflects the patient's condition, better optimizing the right response to the right patient at the right time. The new system provides critical patients, such as those experiencing cardiac arrest, receive immediate attention and improving their chances of survival. Paramedics will drive with lights and sirens less often and only when necessary. And what this does is improve paramedic and public safety by reducing the risk of traffic-related accidents. Under the current system, paramedics often respond across municipal borders due to the requirements within the Ambulance Act of a seamless provincial paramedic system. However, MPDS only assigns calls across municipal borders for the highest priority of calls to the closest available unit, improving the overall efficiency of the system. MPDS positions us for the future advancements where patients can be referred to appropriate medical care and/or transportation services. This is a significant and necessary move in the right direction and ties in well with the new models of care our service is already beginning to implement. Richmond Hill residents can expect future options directing them to appropriate care facilities, providing them with the right care at the right time. MPDS is continually refined based on feedback and research, incorporating data from international sources to provide the highest standard of service and ongoing improvements to paramedic response. This includes standardized pre-arrival instructions, as well as post-dispatch and scene safety information. In collaboration with the Ministry of Health and other regions, we developed a public awareness campaign to inform residents about the new dispatch system. This campaign aims to educate the public on what to expect when they call 911. The campaign launched in September of 2024 and is focused on educating the public about the changes and improvements in paramedic response. It will use a variety of strategies to reach broad and targeted audiences, which include seniors. It is important to note that members of the community do not need to do anything differently when calling 911. The awareness campaign is meant to educate residents that the most urgent calls will be prioritized first. Residents will be well informed about the new dispatch system and understand that their experience when calling 911 will remain seamless and efficient. I wanted to shift gears a bit, and I wanted to bring some highlights to Richmond Hill Council regarding our paramedic services master plan. The York Region Council approved Paramedic Services Master Plan, which is currently focused on our 2021 to 2031 operating years, and outlines the data and strategies needed to meet legislated and council-approved response time targets. The master plan is a strategic roadmap so that York Region Paramedic Services can continue to meet growing demands and maintain a high standards of emergency response within our community. York Region Council approved a response time target of 8 minutes or less to lights and sirens incidents, 70% of the time region-wide, as well as in each of the local municipalities. As mentioned earlier, demand for paramedic services is increasing across all age groups, with the senior population growing the fastest. Planning for this growth is essential to provide equitable access to paramedic service across all 9 local municipalities. To balance resources effectively, the master plan includes provisions for adding ambulance resources through 2031. Further, the strategic placement of stations and the implementation of MPDS are crucial steps towards enhancing emergency response in all municipalities, including Richmond Hill. This planning is crucial to support the projected population growth, particularly in Richmond Hill, which is expected to see an average yearly increase of 1.8%, reaching a population of almost 260,000 by 2031. Ongoing collaboration and monitoring will help us adapt and improve our services to meet the community's needs effectively. By planning for future growth and resource needs, we aim to provide a consistent and equitable paramedic service response to all residents. To summarize the presentation today, MPDS is a tool that is expected to benefit the emergency response system significantly and is a key component to support how we prepare for the future and continue to meet increasing system demands. Regardless of these changes, Paramedic Services is prioritizing the customer service expectations of our residents with providing a clinically safe paramedic response. We understand our residents expect a high standard of service from us, and we are committed to continuing to deliver on that. A public awareness education campaign has been launched, educating the public on what to expect with these changes. And finally, our current master plan supports the transition to the new dispatch system by equipping our service with the necessary resources and infrastructure to respond effectively to emergencies, maintain optimal performance, deliver responsive health outcomes, and provide quality customer service. MPDS will be evaluated for efficiency in utilizing paramedic resources and is going to be a factor in all of our future planning activities. I just want to once again thank Richmond Hill Council for the opportunity to come and to show some of the incredible work that is occurring in our service and in our system. And we once again thank you for being able to take you through this today.
Well, thank you very much, Acting Chief. We'll open this up to discussion, and maybe we should get a motion to receive the presentation with thanks at the same time. So, Councillor Davidson, you'll move that? Okay, go ahead.
I thank you through you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for your presentation. I visited you last year and we had a great tour and I was really impressed. When you said okay, so one thing I thought I heard you say redirected. Are you saying that now if the dispatcher talks through an issue with somebody calling 911, that the ambulance won't show up, they'll say, you know what, there's time for you to take your daughter or son or whatever to the hospital or walk-in clinic? Do you mean that it will be determined that not every single call needs an ambulance?
Thank you so much for the question, Councillor, and through you, Chair. So those are, the MPDS is the first step. So that's currently not part of it, but what it will mean.
What's that mean?
Sorry?
MPDS?
MPDS, so the new medical priority
system.
dispatch system that
Okay,
we're changing to. So the caller not having an ambulance sent or being referred directly to an alternate care pathway is not part of the current rollout. But the new dispatch system, being MPDS, will allow us to be able to implement some of those things into the future. So what it will mean currently for residents if they have a low acuity. So for example, if someone calls and says, I have a runny nose, and for whatever reason they've activated 911, they will receive an ambulance, but it is certainly not going to be our quickest response. So once the system has an availability to do that call, they will. In the future, having this new system allows us to, instead of it being 1 or 2 response priorities, it actually opens it up to thousands to prioritize the calls. And what that means for us in the future and is being able to try new and innovative programs. So for example, actually having healthcare providers in the dispatch system, having an actual interaction with a 911 caller. And in the future, it opens the opportunity that they may not receive an ambulance, but will receive a better referral to a better, more appropriate healthcare resource.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. So the part about you won't be running sirens is alarming to people like me. That feels like less urgency when people are supposed to call an ambulance when there's urgency.
Excellent question. And so we currently run 70% of the time lights and siren response. With MPDS, as it is a very much a medically validated tool, it is better to understand what the issues and the clinical condition of the individual. And we will still certainly be running lights and siren to high level calls, but we expect that number to be similar to other regions that have already moved to this, and sliding from 70% of the time lights and siren to 50% of the time. And what it means is that 20% difference of that caseload, it doesn't mean that we're not having an urgent response. It means that the risks of driving lights and siren through congested traffic areas, through intersections, it's the risk-benefit ratio isn't there. It doesn't mean that for someone, say, who's having chest pain or who's not breathing, certainly lights and siren, most urgent response, and that we still expect to be 50% of our cases. But there's a lot of research that indicates the use of lights and siren and the impact that it has on traffic safety for the providers and for the public. And so it's an opportunity to improve road safety as well. So it's really a balance of all those things.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Is the video we saw for the general public or for council?
Thank you. That will be the video that will be for the general for council, but also we're going to be using the same video for public engagement.
Through Mr. Chair, I respectfully suggest you take that kid with the twisted ankle out of it, because it gives the impression that if my kid falls at the park, I should call 911 when I should throw the kid in the car and go to the local clinic. When I saw that video, I was shocked that anyone would call 911 because your kid rolled their ankle, but that's just my opinion. Thank you so much.
No, and if I'm able to respond through you, Chair, for that comment, that is the reality of the system, and we do see, and that is the reason for having a better clinically validated tool to ask these questions, so to determine the right response to that. So definitely take the comment on. However, that is the reality of what we do see within our system very commonly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may, I mean, just in response to that, I understand what you're saying. That did occur to me as well. But on the other hand, when somebody is in medical distress, I don't think it's necessarily for the general public to determine what the level of response should be. I mean, if there's any question that somebody is in even, I mean, other than a runny nose, I mean, in some sort of trouble, I'd rather that they called the ambulance to make, and then have the medical professionals actually assess what the response should be, right? But I do understand what you're saying, but I think that's the balance that we're trying to achieve, right? So
Yes, Mr. Mayor, that is absolutely correct. It's an opportunity to really ask some really good questions at the intake phase, and to really understand the patient condition and to provide a response that reflects the urgency of the matter. And this is a system that's been used around the world, and it's very clinically safe to do so, and that's what we're seeing.
okay, Regional Local Councillor DePaulo.
Thank you, Mayor. Has people's driving behavior changed? It sounds like a big part of this is to have less ambulances with lights and sirens. It seems that people aren't as respectful of ambulances as they should be or used to be. If everyone was pulling over and clearing the way, is the data showing some an uptick in accidents caused by emergency vehicles?
So thanks so much for the question, and through the chair, as I mentioned, there is research that indicates the use of warning systems in emergency settings across North America doesn't increase the likelihood of traffic incidents. While that is decreasing the lights and siren response sort of percentages is a byproduct. Really what it is that it allows us to better prioritize. So to put it another way, if 70% of the cases are the highest emergency, it doesn't leave much room to sort them. And so, for example, you could have someone that is having chest pain, and we get there and it's not necessarily urgent, and someone that's stopped breathing. In the current system, whichever one comes in first is what's getting the closest ambulance. In the current system, it will look at both of those. It will, even if the person who's having the chest pain versus someone not breathing, it will send the vehicle to the person having chest pain, but then if a higher priority calls, it'll move the response to the highest priority call. So it's more around how do we prioritize the response and how do we provide an appropriate response to the level of urgency that we're seeing in the call. So while the byproduct is less lights and siren responses, it's not the immediate focus. It's certainly a way to ensure that we have the best, safest response capacity, and that's really what it's about.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Regional Local Councillor Chan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Acting Chief Watts, for the presentation. Always good to see you down here. And actually, one of the questions I have, one of the slides talking about the new system. There's, I think it's actually lower left corner, mentioned about maybe the balance, something relating to siren, siren that we're just talking about. Would that mean that, and we touch on safety is always important for both the ambulance and everybody in the ambulance plus people on the road. Would that mean if the new system, I can't remember the slide number, but I think that's one, these talk about maybe a reduction or balance use when appropriate. Would that mean maybe shorten it at busy hours on the road, or maybe in a more highly dense area, the use of sirens might have different flexible guidelines for the driver or for the paramedic to make decision on whether it's now to sound it or now not to sound it. Through you, Mr. Chair, is there any flexibility? Period.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. Like I said, the decrease in the lights and siren response is an outcome of just understanding understanding the urgency of the situation better. So what it means is currently we would go lights and siren, but it was a non-urgent case, meaning that it was a case that we didn't have to rush there very quickly. And what that does is twofold. One, It increases sort of risks around, like I mentioned, traffic incidents. But secondly, it just means that that vehicle isn't necessarily available for like a truly highly urgent case. And that's really what the design of the system is really more around efficiency and really understanding what the 911 calls coming in, the urgency level is, and just providing a response that meets that level instead of just responding with lights and siren to everything, which we do very well in York Region, but certainly across Ontario and Canada and even internationally, you'll certainly see, media cases where ambulances weren't available for urgent cases. We haven't had anything like that. It is because of the support of councils, and it is through the support of really investing in our system and our infrastructure through our master planning process. But this will allow us to really make sure that we will always have the right response capacity that's available for the most urgent of cases. And that's obviously the biggest risk for us, is not having an ambulance for someone who's really urgent.
Thank you for the answer, Acting Chief Watts. So if I understand correctly, the factors for considerations, not so much the time of the day or the road condition, is really the nature, in a sense, the assessed urgency of the call. That's what my takeaway from what you just said. Okay,
yes,
got it.
correct.
Yeah.
Through you, Chair. Yes, it's the urgency of the condition that determines the response level.
Excuse me. Yeah, thank you. You talk about risk. And I believe one of the not very kind of videos or reporting we've seen, I believe it involved a York Region ambulance maybe about a month ago. So I'm very mindful that they have to keep everybody safe. Obviously, the ambulance and everybody in it and everybody else. On that note, I'm wondering, in terms of the risk factors, is that something is ongoing assessment by the paramedics, through Mr. Chair?
Yes, thank you for the question, Councillor. Through the Chair. In like our service is always looking at opportunities, as well as our work with the province, who really is the regulator and oversees the work that paramedic services do. As well, there's a lot of work that's happening with associations, and as well as being connected with the academic community and really trying to understand the putting in the processes, policies, training and equipment that best supports the patient safety and the delivery of the best quality of care. But also provider safety is a really important part of that, especially with a workforce that is trauma exposed, that is a challenge to find folks with the right education and understanding that there is a sort of a bit of a deficit from community needs versus what the academic system provides in terms of educated paramedics. So these are all absolutely important factors for ethical leaders, but also to be able to continuously run a business like ours. Yeah.
Thank you. My last question, Mr. Chair, is you show one of the slides about the new upcoming stations. And I think you mentioned about a couple of them are within the vicinity of Richmond Hill. I asked that question at Regional Council, but I ask you again. Is that station 85? I noticed in the southeast corner. Is that going to be a permanent station to be in Richmond Hill, or still temporary with our fire services?
No, and yeah, through the Chair. Thanks for the question again. And actually, I think it's a great opportunity to be here. So Station 85, which is a co-locate with Richmond Hill Fire Services, was really intended to be a temporary station on high tech while we were completing the build of our station in Thornhill on Glen Cameron, which is a little bit south of there. Since we've been co-located with them, there's been a lot of work that's happened at the province, and certainly you would be very privy to the population targets in that area around Highway 7 and Yonge and the transit corridor. So where we're currently at with that, we're in the preliminary stages of in working with Chief Burbage to really look at the opportunities, whether to co-locate, but I think both of the services really need to understand the future demand needs in that area, and we hope to be able to bring something back to sort of both your council and region council in the future. My thought is that we will need some, just looking at the updated population targets now targeted for that area over the next 10, 15 years. I would lean more towards the need for more of a permanent station there. But like I said, we're still in the preliminary discussions with Chief Burbidge, and we'll work very closely together to really understand the demand and make sure we have a sort of a safe recommendations in terms of like future for that area and emergency coverage for sure.
Thank you very much for the answer. No more question, but Acting Chief, you're absolutely right, because that's where the future subway is coming. And wow, the province have big plans, but even Richmond Hill, we have Richmond Hill Center Secondary Plan has been approved. We're looking forward to increase in density and a number of other things. In closing, I just want to say through you, Acting Chief, please relate to all the men and women serving in the York Paramedics. I'm always very respectful of all the work they're doing, because it's almost always being carried out under very stressful situation. And very proud of your paramedics, and also a very diverse workforce and innovative, and congratulations and keep it up with your team. Thank you, Mr. Chief.
Thank you,
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Actually, we don't have a seconder. Do you want to second it? Okay, great. All right. So next one is Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Acting Chief, for coming to Council, and thank you for the presentation. I do have a few questions, and one of them is regarding the ambulance station. So thank you for the explanation. I understand it's about the population distribution. So I see Markham has 6 and Vaughan has 5, and we only have 1.5 now, the temporary. Do you think the coverage is enough for the north part of Richmond Hill, or are we relying on Markham? I'm talking about Oak Ridges, North Leslie.
Sure, and thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Chair. So when we look at through the master planning process, so we look at setting targets for region-wide and also in the lower tier. And so yes, we have our station 27, which is on Cachet Woods, which is in the vicinity of 16th and the 404. So that actually is well suited for actually supporting that. I'll start with that one. That is very much well suited in all of our work with the consultants that we work with to understand response capacity. And then once the overpass over the 404 opens, it's actually going to be right there, and actually provides even a more significantly improved access to sort of like the southeast area of Richmond Hill. And in terms of Oak Ridge's response, which I think is your question, we have our station 22, which opened in Gormley as well. And so yes, we have sort of one and have I would say two stations directly within Richmond Hill. The third one being the one that's by the former Buttonville Airport that provides really, really good coverage. But it's also around looking at it as a network. So with our, we've expanded, as I mentioned, in Gormley, which is basically the 404 and Stouffville Road that helps support that area there. We also have a new station that's going to be replacing, which is in Maple on the west side. And then we're also looking at expanding sort of what's in Unionville. And so it really is around how you set up for a network, the vehicles that are available. And then we move them around the station. And so for an ambulance and a paramedic crew that may start at the station in Richmond Hill, they could very well easily be in Georgina providing coverage, because we have a very dynamic deployment model, and that's certainly an advantage. And so as we continuously look at updating our master plan in sort of 5-year increments, we look really operationally 10 years, but from a capital perspective, we look 20 years out when we do this work. We always look, and we certainly take the planning projections that come through the regional planning office. That's what we use, and I know there's a lot of work that happens with the local municipal offices. And so, yes, we have currently good coverage, but once again, houses are being built, intensifications occurring, and that's why we have to continuously look at it. But thank you so much for the question.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. The other thing is I saw in the presentation that under innovation is mental health. I'm sure mental health has been a pressing issue lately. do you see an uptick on the mental health call, and how well equipped are paramedics to deal with mental health, or will you rely on the police, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you for the counselor and through the mayor. Yes, I don't have the figures, but we certainly see increasing responses for calls that are related to mental health. We work very closely with York Regional Police. But it's broader. Like the issue in the solution is certainly broader. It's integrating all this work that's happening with the healthcare system locally. There's a lot of work that's happening with the development of a mental health hub that's going to be, in Newmarket. And there's a lot of work. It certainly is broader. We do a lot of work with the paramedics in terms of increasing their competency around managing incidences that involve mental health crisis, working very closely with the police. But as an offshoot, it is very difficult when you have someone in crisis in an emergent situation. And that's why more infrastructure and more access to inpatient and outpatient services is required. And we certainly have a long way to go, but there's some really good initial steps that are occurring with, I think, the right people at the table, in my opinion. But absolutely, it's a great question.
Thank you. As we can see, at least in Richmond Hill, there's a lot of proposal about long-term care and senior homes, senior apartments. And I can see there might be a higher demand for paramedics. Are we prepared for that?
Great question. And through you, Mr. Mayor, as I mentioned in the presentation, as we age, our chances of hospitalization and in accessing paramedic service, it's exceptionally high. And so that is factored into the work we do with our planning and our demand. So we look at essentially population, like just pure population growth. We look at the age of the population and the general health of the population to help us project. And we also look at another factor, which is really around consumption rates of our service, because we can't really control who calls 911. So they call and we respond. And so one of the things that you see, it's multifactorial in that in the accessing 911 service. So for example, if folks don't have access to primary care, if they don't have access to care in the community, then they call 911 or they access through the emergency department. So those are all the things, but certainly care for seniors is one of the things that is a big driver for our, and not just enhancing it, but there's a ton of work we're doing on our community paramedicine side, which I briefly mentioned. And a lot of what that is it's new models of care that we're involved in a number of pilots that are really looking at how do you best support aging in place. So one of them is our IMPACT program, which is a new model of care approved by the province of Ontario, where we've trained currently a small number of paramedics, but we're expanding that number in how to function in the primary care environment. And right now they'll receive a 911 call. They may assess the patient. They may do point of care blood work. They may do urinalysis. They will work with a physician. And the outcome is often that they're actually discharging these folks at home. And so a lot of this cohort is seniors. We have a number of models of care that are actually targeting. One just launched last week. It's called our CPLTC Plus, which is Community Paramedicine in the Long-Term Care Home Plus. And what that is partnering with various nursing homes and their medical staff when a lot of these residents of these long-term care homes are being transferred to the hospital for diagnostic issues when they're not really receiving that. So paramedics are being specially trained to do point of care blood work, to do point of care ultrasound, and a number of these other factors. And these are small pilots, and we're really looking at sort of the evaluation of them and expanding them. So it's not just around expanding our workforce and continuing to just add ambulances. It's how do we provide the right care at the right time in the right place, and it's increasing the infrastructure within our system. But excellent question, and obviously I could talk forever about it. So very passionate about it. So thank you so much through you, Chair, for the question.
Thank you. Last question. Recruitment. York Region is very diverse. So in terms of recruitment process, in your workforce, do you have a lot of, paramedics that speak different languages?
So that's a fantastic question, and through you, Chair, it is definitely an area where we saw as an opportunity. 10 years ago, our workforce was I would say, not very diverse. We did not have a number of our folks that spoke different languages, and that has been really gradually changing. And we're really doing a lot of work in the EDI space internally to not only make ours a premier service to come and work at, but that they have the supports, that they feel supported, and having a diverse workforce that is reflective of the community is really our goal. And we're certainly seeing every recruit class more diverse in the cultural backgrounds and the languages that we are speaking. And we have certainly had some targeted. The challenge we have in the paramedic service is because of the legislation, you have to decide you want to be a paramedic. You go and you do schooling and a post-secondary education, and that's the pool we can pull from. So unlike the fire or police, where certainly their post-secondary definitely comes into it, it's a legislative requirement. So it's really around grassroots work, trying to engage the community. We had an opportunity even this week. I was at a number of Remembrance Day ceremonies and really just engaging youth, and I had an opportunity to speak earlier this year at an event in Markham. But it had there was about a few hundred Air Cadets and Navy Cadets, and it's those groups, and really when we're there with them is explaining to folks that may speak different languages that definitely those are the folks that we really want to tap into, and that only makes the services we deliver stronger and more effective. So yeah, great question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That's all my questions. And once again, thank you very much for the presentation, and thank you all paramedics. Always being in the front line, saving lives and facing lots of challenges. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've got Councillor Silovitz and then Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Acting Chief. Very good presentation, and of course, our thanks go to all members of staff and everyone who staffs the 911 call centers. I just have two questions actually. Through you, Mr. Chair, have you found, as someone who lives on the Yonge Street corridor, have you found that the use of the bus rapid transit way for emergency vehicles, including ambulances, has made a distinct difference in timing? Because to me, from where I look over my balcony, it certainly seems that way. I mean, yes, they have to still stop at the traffic lights, but they've got a free run between lights, and to me, I think it's fantastic. Can you comment on that through you, Mr. Mayor?
Thank you for the question, Councillor, and through you, Mayor. We have not quantified it, but we've had experience. Probably first Highway 7 and Davis Drive were the first real two experiences almost 10 years ago. Qualitative, I would say that yes, it has, but that would be something we would really want to look at and measure. And it is certainly. We're seeing congestion in certain areas, especially around rush hour. It is very difficult for, and it's not just us. Our fire services and police also have the same things, but certainly having infrastructure like that has open roadway is always a benefit in a highly urbanized environment to get to places quicker. So I don't have it quantified, but I believe it's a really good strategy. So thank you.
Thank you. No, I definitely, as someone from the outside looking in, I believe there's no question it is, because they don't have to, wait for people to move out the way. They can just keep going. So it's excellent. The other question I have through you is in your presentation under staffing, you say there are 55 casual paramedics. Through you, Mr. Mayor, can you explain what a casual paramedic is?
Sure. Thank you for the question, and through you, Mr. Mayor. So we have a number of classifications. So we have permanent full-time. We have temporary full-time, which are essentially fully certified paramedics. Generally, it's an entry into the system, and they're there backfilling folks that are out of the workplace. So being a trauma-exposed profession that is very physically demanding, we do see very high WSIB numbers for physical and for non-physical injuries. We also have a relatively young workforce, and so even things like expanding maternity benefits to 18 months, it just increases the amount of time where we don't have staff actively in the workplace. So we use temporary full-time and what we call casual. So a casual paramedic, they're fully certified as a paramedic. Some of them are due to family circumstances, so they are able to pick their schedule. They don't work a full-time schedule, but they're the same certification level as all of our other paramedics, our full-time paramedics. And we also, some of them work other jobs. We have they're full-time firefighters, and they work part-time with us. So it allows us to increase our capacity in terms of our staffing numbers and fill in for where we have challenges over the summer or with our long-term leaves and things like that. So yeah, it's a staffing strategy that has positives and negatives, I guess, for it. But it's a historical part of our industry. So thank you for the question. Yeah.
Thank you, Acting Chief. Greatly appreciated. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
Well, thank you very much. Through the chair, also like to thank you for the presentation. Much appreciated. Definitely appreciate everything that you guys do. The question, or maybe a bit of a concern that I have, is when you're talking about, and this will be my paraphrasing, but when we're sort of vetting the call that comes in to determine priority and so forth. I guess I understand if we're looking at a sprained ankle or something like that, that I see where Councillor Davidson's coming from. But I guess my experience, and I don't have a lot of experience, but it would seem to me that sometimes you've come to a call where you're addressing something that starts out as being not a high priority, but over time, and I know you're talking about how you monitor and you're doing blood and all that type of thing, conditions can change, particularly with the onset of shock and so forth. So I guess this is more of a comment, I guess, in that I'm a little bit concerned that somebody may not end up with an ambulance and their condition it does change, but because of what the person that called it in heard is thinking, well, just sit tight, and is not really paying attention to the change in the condition. I just wonder if you could speak to that maybe.
No, happy to. And through you, Mr. Chair. So the MPDS system is medically validated over millions and millions of cases. It's used worldwide. It's used across North America, and it is essentially the I would call it the gold standard currently for prioritizing calls. It does follow the process, but it also does allow to have our very experienced call takers be able to use their own judgment and to upgrade calls and upgrade cases. And so while there is a theoretical risk, if there are any concerns around how the questions are being answered, it prompts the higher level response. And so it is very it does capture that. It is very safe. And we do, once we launch it this evening, we will be doing, even internally, even though it's the same system that's used around the world, we will be doing a lot of internal QA and really understanding any of the cases that are potentially missed. Someone not breathing, someone's unconscious, someone's having chest pain, all those really key indicators. If someone's generally unwell, but they're having troubles breathing, that could be someone has influenza and they're very well, or it could be someone that's having a life-threatening condition. Those receive a lights and siren response. So the system does skew towards the safer side. It just does it in a way, and it really captures those cases that are, for example, someone's been generally unwell for 4 days, 5 days. They're walking around, they're alert, they're oriented, their breathing's okay, their color is good, they're answering questions fully. We will still provide a response, but we don't need to drive through intersections with lights and siren to get there compared to someone who's having chest pain. That's sort of the difference. So I definitely take your comment on notice. It's certainly something that is very at the top as we implement this new system. It is very top of mind and top of our process to make sure that we're on top of it and really understanding the impact. But it is really the way to ensure in the future with the growth with regards to the demand that we actually have ambulances available to respond to the most urgent cases. And if we don't prioritize the cases as they come in, there's a risk that we will actually not have ambulances to respond to the highest one. And that's why we have to implement these innovations.
Thank you, and I appreciate the answer through the chair. I would imagine that in those situations where the person taking the call, has made that sort of determination, as you mentioned, that they would be coaching whoever's on the other end of the line to say, if their condition changes, call back, but give them some sort of things as to what to look for in terms of condition changes, that type of thing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, one of the benefits of MPDS is actually, it's a significant improvement in the dispatcher instructions that are provided, whether it's through delivering CPR instructions or for other cases that are holding. It very much is twofold. The caller calling back if anything changes, and also the dispatch system calling in at specific time intervals and inquiring if there's been any changes and upgrading the response if that's the case.
Much appreciated. Those are all my questions, and thank you for all you do.
Thank you. Actually, it's interesting you say that because I was thinking, it probably would be helpful if more and more people had first aid training too, because a lot of this could be knowledge is power, and St. John's Ambulance, who I know we're all aware of, has been providing that type of thing, as other organizations as well. But the question I wanted to ask was, so can you give me a sense with ambulance? I know we have these stations that we have, but on a typical shift, how often or how much time does an ambulance and that crew spend in the physical station? Like I would think that with ambulance, much more so than fire, they would be out on the road a lot of the time. So the actual physical location of the station isn't quite as important as where the ambulances are geographically. Is that true or not?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Mayor. So that is correct. We use a dynamic staffing model. So starting about 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning till about 10 o'clock at night is our peak time. And certainly between the hours of 2 to 5, it's the lowest, and we try and adapt our staffing to that. Day shift, depending on the station. Certainly we have more rural stations in the region that they may spend more time responding just because of the population base is lower there. Whereas, within the south end of York region on day shifts, it's very common for the paramedics to leave and to not return to a station throughout the day. They essentially go from call to call and to hospital. Our design in terms of the master plan, in terms of the capital infrastructure of stations, it really is designed as a network, in that if that was the default, that is really what we measure it from. And when we work with our consultant, they will provide us with it's almost like a heat map. And so if we look at sort of gaps or where calls will come in, or historical calls, or where population bases are. So when we are looking at locations for new stations, we use a heat map approach. It's also very challenging in the south end of York region in particular to find real estate. And so we're even working with co-locate. So we look for, it's a little bit of art and science to be able to find a space that would be a good location to physically build a station, or to co-locate with fire or with police. And then we go back to that sort of heat map approach and understanding if it gives us a response advantage. But it's a very good question. And if I can make one comment, actually, this is November is CPR month. And the majority of folks that are not in healthcare or in the emergency services that do CPR, it's usually on a loved one or a family member. So it's a little PSA is definitely the more people in your community that know first aid and have the ability to do CPR and take on the ability to respond and to start CPR is actually one of the most important things, and is a really good indicator of community cardiac out of hospital cardiac arrest health. So it's a very good PSA to take forward for sure.
Well, thank you. So just to delve into that a bit further. So when on a typical prime time between 7 and 6 or whatever you're saying, when somebody puts in a call for an ambulance, is it likely that the ambulance is coming from the actual station, or are they already on the road somewhere?
So for, as I mentioned, the current response system, there's 2 levels of response. One of them is lights and siren, one of them isn't. The new one has 5 and it's color-based. So purple is someone not breathing, sounds like someone's in cardiac arrest. Red is a chest pain, very urgent, still lights and siren response. For those cases, it is whatever the closest available resource is.
Okay.
It might be we have one at the hospital. It might be we have one on the road. Dispatch will assign to whatever the closest available resource is. For the lower level priorities, and this is what it's a benefit, and we talk about burnout of our workforce. So what would happen now, you could have a paramedic that is, say, they've worked 10 hours in a row, they're finally eating something, and then they get a call for someone with a headache. When they arrive, their headache is actually worse than the person's. So in the new system, those cases may be prioritized less, and what we use is a best unit response, meaning that it takes into account workload, it takes into account the meal rest periods, and then we respond with the most appropriate ambulance to that. So, and if there's a vehicle that's on the way to a lower priority and they're the closest to a higher priority, we move the resource to make sure that those highest priority calls get the highest priority response.
Okay. Final question. So I know that in the past, there's been some concern and controversy maybe over how long paramedics are required to stay at the hospital once they've offloaded a patient. I've had a hard time understanding why they would need to still be there. And maybe you could explain that. I mean, once they've offloaded the patient, they're in the doctor's hands. I'm not sure what the patient, the paramedics add to that equation. And it's a question because I don't know the answer. But also what's being done about that?
Excellent question. And I could probably talk for hours about this one as well. So for you, Mr. Mayor, so what you're referring to is ambulance offload time. And historically, if we go back to about the mid 2000s, 2005, 6, 7, 8, this was a huge challenge for us. And so part of it is paramedics are responsible for care for the individual that's in their sort of chain of care. And it's not until they transfer that care over to the hospital that they're able to leave. A number of years ago, this was a significant issue, hours and hours, because there was no beds that were available for the nursing staff at the hospitals to take over the responsibility for care for those patients. We worked a lot with our local hospitals, with the province, and there was a number of investments. There was a memorandum of understanding from the region that essentially was a pay for performance for an additional capital stream for the hospitals. That's no longer in place. But what that allowed us to do is the hospitals that were underperforming, we were able to hold back some of those capital funds. We invested that into improvement initiatives. You've seen some responsiveness from the provincial government in terms of our dedicated offload nurse funding, which is a separate stream, which we receive about $2.7 million a year from the provincial government to provide to the hospitals for them to provide nursing staff. And so what that allows us to do now is for the paramedics to bring the patients in, they're actually able to transfer that care over to the hospital and then leave much quicker. And so the regional hospitals have some of the best times in the province. Some of that is the investments. A lot of that is the leadership at the hospitals and being at the table and really engaging as a collective that is really important for our community to have paramedics in the 911 system, not sitting at the hospital, not able to respond.
Okay. Thanks a lot. This has been go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Again, thank you for this chance to discuss. And I was at no time trying to say you shouldn't call an ambulance if you think you need one. But I had occasion to call one, and I'm not blaming anybody, but it took 20 minutes to get there. And all I'm saying is, I don't think the public necessarily evaluates when to call an ambulance or not. So it is an education piece, right? Because obviously the ambulance people were doing something else when they couldn't come, and it ended up being great and fine, and they were wonderful. That was my only point, is that educating the public and when do you call an ambulance? My other question is, and you don't have to answer this, but is there any correlation between the millions of people who don't have family doctors and the number of calls you're starting to get of stuff that perhaps isn't urgent?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can answer that. Yes. There's a significant driver, lack of access to primary care. means that the community then goes to what is open and what is available. 911 is 24 hours a day. The hospital is 24 hours a day. It absolutely is. It is a capacity issue, and it does drive folks to seek alternative access to medical care.
Mr. Chair, thank you. So the fact that somebody has if the walk-in is closed, they don't have a family doctor, they call you. And how often would you say that happens? Does it happen daily?
I don't have those figures,
okay.
but I could certainly provide those to you. What I can say is through you, Mr. Chair, is that our highest priority calls, people not breathing, people that don't have a pulse, it represents about 2% of our cases. What I can say is those that have like chest pain, stroke, like really significant medical emergent issues represents around 20 to 25% of our caseload. And the bulk is for less urgent instances. They could still be emergent, they could still require ambulance intervention, but there is certainly a percentage of our cases that are very low priority from how we measure acuity with patients, which is a standardized tool called the CTAS, or the Canadian Triage and Acuity Scale, which is the same as the hospitals.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So I saw your plan to get more ambulances, everything. At this moment in time, do you feel that York Region is staffed appropriately with ambulances and staff?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the answer is yes. We've done an incredible job, and to be honest, our model is what the rest of the 50-something services in the province are seeking to have. So we have a very well staffed, developed infrastructure, and it's because of 20 plus years of really good master planning and trying to project demand and trying to meet that with the sort of supply of resource. So we have a very good system.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for all you all do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, thank you to council for the great questions. And I think this has been a really robust discussion, which is what I was hoping we would get. And I think, coming out of this, when we're all armed with as much information as we possibly can, then we can help to get the word out as well. If there's any information that we can help to disseminate within our community, it only helps all of us. So, count on us to do that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate this. And we have a motion on the floor to receive this presentation with thanks. All those in favor and all those opposed is none. So that carries unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, so in the agenda then, we have one item that was pulled, 15.2.3, which is the Stormwater Management Financial Plan, and that was pulled by Councillor Tree. So go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, just to our finance team, and then because last week we discussed about that maybe report for the flat rates regarding to the option 1, option 2, and option 3. So I'm just wondering if that's available for us to review.
I think it was attached as an addendum to the agenda.
Oh, it's there, right?
It is attached, yes.
Okay, I got it. So I don't have further questions. That's
okay. So are you willing to move the motion that we moved at council or at committee of the whole then?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
I'll move it.
Okay, so we have that as a motion. We need a seconder, Councillor Silovitz. Is there any other discussion on that? Yeah, no, absolutely.
Thank you, through Mr. Chair. So the flat rate, which was a whopper, but we asked for it. We're not making decisions on that at this point. We're just making that was just because it was requested as more information. It doesn't change the motion at all, right?
Through the chair, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the motion that's in front of us at the moment is the motion that we passed at committee of the whole, last week. So are you willing to second that then? Okay. So we have a motion moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? Opposed? That carries. Okay, thank you very much. And okay, moving right along. Let me just see here. What other? Okay, so we've got all of the bylaws have been taken care of. We don't have closed session today, so we need a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of this meeting. Regional Local Councillor Chan, seconded by Councillor Tree. All those in favor? Opposed, that carries. And we now need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Liu, Councillor Tree, all those in favor?